You know, every year in the NFL draft, there's trying to find the next insert player here. The next Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, right? Oh, Zach Wilson's got the arm of the next Patrick Mahomes. The next Tyreek Hill. Funny how these guys happen to be on the same team. The next Tyreek Hill. We hear it every single season. Was that Henry Ruggs last year? As of right now, no. Oh, it's going to be Jalen Waddle this year. We'll see, but I doubt it. Tyreek Hill is pretty, I would say, unique to his own right. But the reason I start there, and how y'all doing, ladies, gentlemen, fellas, what's up, what's poppin'? Hopefully you're having a lovely day. The reason I start there is this player might actually be that poor man's Tyreek Hill. Right? And what does that mean? Well, he's not to the same level as Tyreek Hill yet. Maybe he can take that second-year leap after his rookie campaign last year. But I say poor man's because everybody's looking for this guy in the first round. The Henry Ruggs, the Jalen Waddles are early picks. Henry Ruggs, first wide receiver off the board in 2020. Waddle wasn't the first this year, but he was inside the top 10, right? Inside the top 6. So it's interesting. The guy that I like, and in this video that you're going to regret not drafting this player in potentially the double-digit rounds right now. He's currently going off the board as the 120th player off the board. That would be the last pick in the 10th rounds of drafts, 12-team drafts. He's my number 92 overall player. 92nd. So I'm 28 spots higher than consensus. That means I am very much above the field. And I don't have to reach 2 to 3 rounds, but I'll reach 1 round to get him and secure him on my team because I think by the time August comes around, by the time the season starts off in September and people start realizing what this player is doing, they're already talking about him. You're going to start to realize it as well and draft him a lot earlier. And that man's name is wide receiver Darnell Mooney out of Tulane in the 5th round, was taken by the Bears last year, and he is the poor man's Tyreek Hill, the player that's got speed, versatility, physicality, can break tackles. He was one of only 2 players on at least 50 receptions last year to break 25% of the initial tackles. That is very Tyreek Hill-esque. He came in with a 95th percentile 40-yard dash time, running a 4.38 at the combine last year. Darnell Mooney is a weapon. And we saw that in his rookie year, despite some of the worst, if not arguably the worst quarterback play for a full season, he played in all 16 games, was for Darnell Mooney. You will regret not drafting Darnell Mooney this year in your drafts. You must draft Darnell Mooney. We might go on a limb to say that, as he stands out for me right now as one of the best wide receiver values in the fantasy football drafts. And it doesn't have to stop at just drafts. Take the over on the player props if you can find the yardage. I haven't found any receptions, but take the over on the player props for yardage. I mean, let's look at what he did last year. 61 receptions, over 630 yards and 4 touchdowns on 98 targets. Just misses out on 100 targets. I mean, people are trying to project out Jamar Chase this year for 100 targets in a loaded offense. And they're getting very happy to just say that he'll have 100 targets this year. Darnell Mooney just did that last year. I'm not saying take Darnell Mooney ahead of him. He's obviously competing with guys like Allen Robinson and others we'll get into. But there's something to the fact that in a rookie season with bad quarterback play, he had 98 targets. He was getting open downfield and getting open off them downfield. He was number 11 in the league of targets of 20 or more yards. They call him deep targets. That boy was getting deep down the field and getting wide open, but he was getting overthrown. You can look up videos on Twitter, on YouTube. You probably saw some memes of just Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, overthrowing left and right Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney ranked last year in the top 10 in unrealized air yards, meaning that he was getting targets downfield and they were being overthrown. They were not accurate. They were not drops. They were not classic unrealized air yards. Just balls that were thrown not near him. But he was open and targeted deep. Now, it was as early as week 2 last year when Darnell Mooney started to take over ahead of Anthony Miller. Literally 1 week. Anthony Miller was a hot commodity coming off of back-to-back years, his first 2 years in the league with shoulder injuries. Okay, year 3, here comes the breakout for Miller. No. Darnell Mooney said, pause to that, motherfucker. Slapped him aside. Second week last year, 66% of the snaps. He averaged on the season, 76% of the snaps, and he played 20% of the snaps out of the slot. Tyreek Hill-esque. There's a little bit of versatility there. Go into the slot and do your work, commanding over 6 targets per game and a 16.5% target share from both Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles, a combination of the two of them. Now, let's talk about his quarterback play last year, and then we can talk about the upgrades that he's going to have. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles last year were absolutely brutal. Like I said, 20 or more targets last year. He was ranking borderline top 20 in the NFL, Darnell Mooney. The problem was, according to Sports Info Solutions, SIS, only 69% of his targets, right? Not even 3/4, 69% were catchable. 31% of his targets, every 3 out of 10 targets, basically every 1 out of 3 targets coming his way was just not catchable. Mitchell Trubisky last year ranked 30th in completion percentage, and Nick Foles ranked 31st. There's only 32 NFL teams, so they were some of the worst accuracy quarterbacks in the NFL. Trubisky ranked 27th in passes of 20 or more yards down the field, which is why Darnell Mooney didn't pop off more. I mean, if he was just around league average in his overall catchable targets, he ranked 75th in catchable targets out of all wide receivers in the league. Again, he was the number 2 wide receiver on his team. There are 32 teams in the NFL. That's 64 teams. He ranked 75th. If he was just closer to average, he's pushing towards a 1,000-yard season and 6 touchdowns. And people are drafting Darnell Mooney this year in the 7th round, maybe even earlier. So, QB upgrades. That's correct. Andy Dalton. That's incorrect. Andy Dalton is not going to start the season, in my opinion, as the quarterback here. I do believe it's Justin Fields. Now, there is some stuff you have to take a step back, us fantasy gamers, us fantasy or real-life bettors from a prop standpoint and that type of stuff. There's some real jobs. Ryan Pace and these Bears organization, there's some guys with their heads on the chopping block here. So it does make some sense if you're talking about it from that. And look, you might say, they're not going to do this. This is a business. People are looking out for themselves and their friends. You start Andy Dalton for 4, 5, 6 games, and then you put Justin Fields in, maybe after the bye week, somewhere around there, and then you say, oh, yeah, we stunk this year, but look what Fields did this last month. If we have him all next, you get your job for next year. So there's some little pull and push and pull there that can happen, but I do expect Fields to be the day 1 starter. It's not locked in stone, though, but that's what I'm expecting. And for Darnell Mooney's case and everybody else on this team in this passing attack and this offense, they better hope so, because Andy Dalton last year ranked 29th in true completion percentage. So you have Andy Dalton 29th last year, and then you have Mitch Trubisky 30th and Nick Foles 31st. So just some of the worst quarterbacks in terms of accuracy. They're going to need Andy Dalton, and Darnell Mooney is going to need Andy Dalton to not be the starter on this team. Insert Justin Fields. Now, Mooney in OTAs and approaching the preseason has already been saying he had a very widespread, if you track any of the news on Twitter, which is very much a bubble for this NFL stuff, it was all over there on how he was smiling left and right over the past week from the deep balls from Justin Fields. He said it is the best deep ball he's ever seen. And now that's very much coach speak from a player. This is the best this guy's ever looked, all that type of stuff. But he did look pretty genuine in the post-game conference, and it is true. Justin Fields was one of the better deep ball throwers in college football and one of, obviously, the better quarterbacks. Now, there's this negative stigma we get on Justin Fields because he dropped in the draft. I mean, he dropped to still be picked inside the top 15 picks, a borderline top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson were drafted in that exact same range, right? So we get the stigma because people want him to go number 2 overall, number 3 overall. He drops to still a basically top 10 pick. So this is an elite quarterback coming out of college. I expect a massive upgrade for Darnell Mooney. Now, before we get into the target competition, I want to show you what happened towards the final games of the season last year. In the final month of the year, a rookie who's figuring out the NFL, and he figured it out pretty damn quick to get 2/3 of the snaps by week 2, but he starts figuring out the NFL here, and you can see from RotoViz the splits I'll put on the screen. The final month of the season, his final 4 games, he starts to average 13.9 fantasy points per game. That's 222 total points. That is clearly very good. That is better than where he finished, and that would be very much so if he averaged that over the course of the season. Worth taking before the 10th round in your draft. So you can see what he did during the first 12 games of the season, right? The first week he didn't really play much, but then he starts to get acclimated, but he still only averages 8 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 35 yards per game on about 5.9 targets. So over the last month, he sees about an extra target per game. He starts to average 15 more yards per game. That's important. He picks up some touchdowns as well, on pace to have 8 touchdowns in a 16-game season, right? So you're starting to see an additional 6 fantasy points per game over the final month. He started to come along, even with that bad quarterback play. Now, let's see that roll over, and I think it will, into his 2021 campaign. Now, who are some of the players that can stop him? And if you're interested in any of my breakdowns like I do in these videos on a bunch of players in the draft guide, player profiles, rankings for fantasy, tiers, top 200s, key stats, metrics, reliability charts, consistency charts, that type of stuff, we do have a free draft guide now. You can figure out how to get it for free thanks to our sponsors and partners at PrizePicks. It's linked in the description below for the 2021 fantasy football season. Encourage you to check it on out, fellas and ladies out there in the streets. So what does the target competition look like? Look, going through this Bears roster and every single team, the Bears have a sneaky deep roster on offense now. Like, sneaky deep. At running back, sneaky deep. Yeah, I mean, they signed Damian Williams. Remember him? Sat out last year. Tariq Cohen comes back from injury. Wasn't that efficient in the passing game in 2019, but got a lot of volume. Still a good pass-catching running back. They're pretty deep at wide receiver. Anthony Miller might want to trade, right? But Allen Robinson, the obvious big man right there, right? Allen Robinson last year commanding over a 25% target share, over 20% in the red zone, goes for over 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, and had over 150 targets. That's the biggest target competition. But down the final month of the season, Darnell Mooney was kind of going neck and neck with Allen Robinson in terms of targets, receptions, fantasy points. He was right there. And then after that, it's Darnell Mooney as the number 2 option. Anthony Miller was around there, but he only ended up seeing a 13% target share to Mooney as a rookie, 16.5. He only saw 4.5 targets per game to Mooney seeing about 6.1 per game. And now he's not happy. He's disgruntled there. He's not commanding a trade, but the talks of him potentially wanting to be out of Chicago are on the table. Now, in the NFL, salaries are a little bit wonky. It's hard to trade players, especially coming into your 4th season with not much production. So we'll see what happens there, but he's not much of a threat in my opinion. You go down a little bit more and you have some older wide receivers who have never done much in the NFL, like a Damiere Byrd from the Patriots. He played the 5th most snaps last year in the NFL, as you can see on the screen right now. He saw a nice target share with Cam Newton, 19% on a team that didn't really throw a lot, only 5.1 targets per game. I don't expect them to be much. In 4 wide receiver sets, if they do that, I don't know how often they're going to do that. I expect more, probably 2 tight end sets than 4 wide receiver sets here in Chicago's offense. Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham, some other target competition. But in 4 wide receiver sets on the outside, a burner like Damiere Byrd should be an option downfield. They drafted a rookie in Daz Newsome. I don't expect much there at a Daz Newsome this year out of UNC. Did not have too much production on a 20% target share. Only had about 680 yards his final year there. He's fine, but late round wide receiver, it's more of a depth piece. In my opinion, they have those tight ends. Cole Kmet, who came on towards the end of the year. There might be a video needed on Cole Kmet on himself as a breakout tight end potentially in the future because, look, he played 14 games as a rookie. He ran 28.2 routes. You can see it on the screen per week over the final 6 weeks compared to just 8 routes per week over the first 8. So, I mean, his production, his usage was more than tripling over the final month of the season, and that was taking away from one Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, the first 9 weeks of the season, was running 32.1 routes per week. I mean, that's up there as a top 5 tight end in terms of your usage, and over the last 7 games, just 12.7 routes per week. That is a very bad part-time, maybe just red zone player at best. So there is a lot of bodies here, but I think Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet are going to battle each other. Daz Newsome not really in depth, maybe battles Damiere Byrd, and I think Darnell Mooney kind of already staked his claim last year ahead of Anthony Miller. So it's really just Allen Robinson. There's running backs. David Montgomery saw a lot of usage last year in general and in the passing game because, well, they didn't have any other pass-catching running backs. Tariq Cohen got hurt early on. I expect Cohen and his over 100 targets and over his number 3 in the NFL, over 75 receptions, right, in 2019 to take away some of that David Montgomery usage, which is why we're lower on him this season than the market. But lots of guys who they can go to here. But if you're talking just strictly wide receivers, it's 1A, Allen Robinson, and I would go on a limb to say 1B instead of B, Darnell Mooney. Thank you for tuning into this video, gang. Again, hey, like, subscribe if you enjoy these types of content. We're doing these videos throughout the week, and then once the NFL season starts, it's bang, bang, Monday night, Thursday night football, sports betting, DFS, your start-em, sit-ems, all that type of stuff, right? Sunday, dang, I can't wait. If you want the NFL 2021 Fantasy Football Draft Guide, it is linked down below. You can get it for free or find out how to get it for free thanks to our sponsors promoting the guide this year. You can check that out, link down below. It'll take you to a nice landing page describing all that. Rankings, top 200s, everything described is in there. Key stats, databases, tiers, it all to dominate your draft. And not just, give you the tools that'll make you finish like top 3. No, we're actually trying to win here. We're not projecting and ranking out on averages. We're trying to project forward here. We got you. Check it all out. Peace out, gang.